On this edition of Jets FM on the Ourlads Football Network, Randy Lang, senior consultant and reporter for NewYorkJets.com, is here to analyze the latest transactions for the Jets since their 53-man roster was set on cut day, break down the depth chart, and make predictions for the 2018 season. And we'll also take a look ahead at the game on Monday night, Jets at Lions, as Jets FM on the OFN starts now. It's Friday, September 7th, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma. This is our second of two 2018 season preview editions of Jets FM on the Ourlads Football Radio Network at ourlads.com. Jets FM is brought to you by ourlads.com with the best New York Jets depth charts in the industry. StoreStreams.com. The StoreStreams music service offers a complete solution for restaurants, bars, hotels, and retailers of all sizes in need of background music for their business. StoreStreams.com music service plans start at just $20 a month. And Randy Lang's weekly in-season routine for NewYorkJets.com begins on Saturday this week with his 7-point game preview, his weekly Inside the Numbers story on Sunday, and his Jets-Lions game coverage on Monday night. So, Randy, I hear you finished editing the annual 8-page Jets kickoff preview pullout section that will appear in the New York Daily News on Sunday as well.
Yes, we have, Greg. That's a labor of love at this time of year. We've done it for every year, I think, that I've been there, which is now, this is the 12th season, I think, with the Jets. So it's not going to give you any late breaking news, but nevertheless, we got a lot of information in there, a feature on Sam Darnold by Eric Allen, and position-by-position breakdown and draft class breakdown. So I think it'll be informative.
All right. Well, and that's all. Now, that's something, by the way, that you can only pick up on newsstands?
Yes. To my knowledge, it's not digital.
Okay.
It's in the middle of the Daily News Sunday newspaper. So,
got it.
You might have to look for it. It might not be in sports, but it will be there.
All right. Sounds good. So let's get right to it. A lot to cover here. Let's go over the depth chart, and then we'll also include analysis as we run through it on players that did or did not make the team. Some of the moves that were made this week. The practice squad has been settled, at least for now. The latest injury reports, suspension news, and so forth. So let's start at quarterback. Sam Darnold's the man. Teddy Bridgewater is gone. So Sam Darnold earned it. From everything that we've heard, from what we saw in preseason games, he was clearly the best rookie quarterback out there. And also, the Jets organization was the one that gave him the opportunity probably better than anyone else, including Baker Mayfield. And so Sam Darnold took it, ran with it, and now he'll start on Monday night.
Yes, he did, and run with it is part of his attraction because he showed incredible heads-up play with when he had to scramble. He seemed to just instinctively know where the pressure was coming from and when he could run against the man coverage and exactly how far he had to go before he slid. I mean, he looked like a pro there, but of course the Jets fans and everybody else is going to want to see him fling the ball a little bit.
Sure.
And he did that well also in practice and all off season and in the preseason games. He didn't explode, but he did perform admirably, and he looks like he's heady and he looks like he's ready to go. So he's going to get that nod. He's going to be the first or the youngest starting quarterback on opening day in the NFL in the Super Bowl era.
Yeah,
and he's going to be the youngest quarterback to start a Jets game ever in any game.
Wow.
Joe Namath was more than a year older than Sam will be when Joe got his first game experience back in 1965, and he didn't even start until Game 3 that year.
Yep. All right. And Josh McCown being the backup because Bridgewater's gone. Did you think that the Jets, compensation-wise, because when the Saints are going to have a really good season, you would think. So it's really closer to a fourth-round pick than a third, but it is a third. So do you think they did the right thing? Do you think it had anything to do, too, with making sure they had enough compensation if they could swing the Khalil Mack trade? And overall, did you agree and think it was the right move?
Well, that's possible, although the Jets, of course, have not said anything about Khalil Mack, who did go to Chicago.
Sure.
But yeah, they definitely were looking around, and as an aside, there they did sign Jerry Atochu, who did have one good season with the Chargers as a pass rusher, but has been kind of sidelined the last couple of years with a foot, and so he's going to be the poor man's Khalil Mack, perhaps, on the Jets. So with that, at least they're hoping that he can produce at some level close to that. But primarily, I think the key was the Jets were prepared to go ahead with Bridgewater, but they wanted to hear some things from prospective suitors, and the Saints did come up with the third-round pick, which, as you say, will be low. But on the other hand, the Jets gave up both twos that they had this year to move up to get Sam Darnold. So instead of a 1-3 draft next year, at the moment, they'll have a 1-3-3, which,
sure.
The draft math makes it kind of like a 2 or a low 2, or, in other words, the Jets, I think, felt very good about the value they got. They did return, I think, a 6th-round pick to the Saints to balance it, but Teddy Bridgewater showed that he's back from that devastating knee injury of 2 years ago. He would have been the option, obviously, if there was a competition still going on. It might have been a tough call for Todd Bowles and Jeremy Bates, but as it is, Teddy Bridgewater is now a Saint, working behind Drew Brees, and Sam Darnold is the guy with Josh McCown behind him.
All right, and of course, we would think that if the Jets didn't feel comfortable, depending on where their first-round draft pick is either, they could always move down in the draft. McCagnon's been he's done that just about every draft where he's made moves up and down. So you can accumulate more of those picks if you want to, but the long way to go before we talk about draft picks. Let's go to the running back position. And from what I saw in the preseason, since Powell was the starter in the first game, and that didn't have to be. I mean, he could have started Crowell, and I know that didn't mean anything really, but maybe it did. Then Crowell gets hurt. Powell played more than Crowell did. I get the feeling Powell is going to be the starter when they go out there. What that means, I don't think it means much. I think we're going to see an even split. But I'm happy to see it, though, because I think maybe now Bilal Powell will end up getting even more reps than I originally thought he was going to get when we first talked about a couple of months ago. The one surprise, though, was Lawrence Thomas. Very surprised the Jets kept 4 tight ends and a fullback. Very surprised about that.
Yeah, they did. They had a basketball team there at tight end all preseason. They also had Clive Walford out there, who came over from the Raiders, and he played well too. And he was the odd man out, so they did keep 4. They're going to have to find roles for each of them. Eric Tomlinson, the blocker, Neil Sterling, Jordan Leggett, both can receive. Chris Herndon, a big target rookie, who also showed some receiving chops. So that's going to be up again to Jeremy Bates, the first-year offensive coordinator for the Jets, to figure out how to implement them. But the one thing that Jeremy has shown is that he seems to be more inclined to go to the tight ends and the running backs as part of the pattern, as opposed to just mere checkdowns. So I think we'll see a bit more of the tight end position in play this year. And as far as running back, just since you mentioned it, Bilal Powell definitely still looks like he's ready to go.
Yep.
He's coming off a season, I've mentioned it a few times, where he was the first Jets back ever to have 3 50-yard runs in one season last year. Isaiah Crowell is an interesting guy. He's a pounder. He's an elusive pounder, similar, as I think I might have mentioned to you, to a young Chris Ivory when they first got him. I'd like to see that same kind of impact. But I don't know that it matters a whole lot whether Crowell or Powell starts. But I think the setup might be, and Bilal Powell talked to Eric Allen of NewYorkJets.com just the other day, and kind of indicated that he's ready, whatever his number is called, to do whatever's necessary. It doesn't seem to matter to him whether he's starting or not. And he figures that Crowell is the kind of guy that can pound it up between the tackles and open up things in misdirections and stretches and things like that, which Bilal Powell has been so effective at over the years.
All right. Who knows? Maybe we'll even get them both on the field at the same time, which wouldn't be a bad idea either, especially since Powell has good experience as a receiver. good blocker, really solid all-around running back. And Crowell, of course, has also been trying to pick things up more in the passing game this offseason with the Jets. But either way, I think the third tight end, whoever it is, and Lawrence Thomas, they've got to keep working hard because, as we'll talk about a little bit later on, there are some players coming off suspensions, quick suspensions, and even some injuries soon that there'll be room that needs to be made on the 53-man. And I think that's a definite spot that the Jets could look at where if they don't feel the guys are doing their job, maybe one of those guys, either a tight end or a fullback, gets sent packing. So they have to keep working hard, and that's all about competition, which is what we talked about a couple months ago, why I think this Jet team is much better off than it's been in years. As far as the wide receiver position, you really got to like the top four with Kearse, Anderson, Pryor, and Enunwa. And if they can all pretty much stay healthy for most of the season, and even if one of them, like Enunwa Kearse this week, who's dealing with the ab injury, even if he were to miss a game or two, the Jets are still in good shape because they have three other guys that are more than capable. I was surprised about Peak, not surprised about Roberts because there's really nobody else on the team besides Cannon, and he's only a rookie that can return kicks. So that'll be interesting, but Roberts has got to do well. Or else they might put that open to another player because he's right now pretty much just a one-trick pony. He's going to be relegated to returning kicks. And Peak is all about special teams at this point. Yeah, he's made some strides here and there in the passing game, and he's a talented receiver. But I think he made this team for special teams more than his receiving. So to let a young receiver like Chad Hansen go, and even Trey McBride, who had a good camp, Peak and Roberts, they better do their jobs.
Yeah, they do have jobs that they have to perform, and Roberts is a very interesting cat because he has returned punts and kickoffs everywhere he's been in the NFL, and he's made, I think the Jets is his fifth stop. Mm-hmm. And the other interesting element going into the Monday night opener at Detroit in Ford Field is that 2 years ago, Andre Roberts was a Lion and returned 2 punts for touchdowns, one of them in Ford Field. So I think he likes that that atmosphere.
I hope so.
And it will be interesting to see if he can conjure up some of that magic that he had in his best punt return season of his career with the 16 Lions.
All right. By the way, give me a guess out of the top 4 receivers who you think might end up being, and not necessarily statistically, but who do you think will end up being when the season's over the number one guy?
Well, Robbie Anderson has shown that he can produce along those lines, although he hasn't had that big breakout year, but he's been close. He's been close to 1,000 yards. He's been around 60 catches. We'd like to see more from whoever that guy is. Robbie's the downfield threat. Jermaine Kearse is more of the the intermediate guy, very sure hands, very steady input, in the wide receivers room. Terrell Pryor, we don't know for sure. He hasn't played a lot in the preseason, still coming along from some foot injuries and things like that. He was, I believe, full practice, but listed on the injury report this week. The big intrigue with Terrell Pryor is what number will he wear when he goes out on the field against the Lions. He wore number 1 all throughout camp, and I don't think he wants to go to the 80s. But there's only one number in the teens left, which is number 16, which Chad Hansen gave up when he left. And I don't know that Terrell likes that number either. So that's a bit of intrigue. But I'd say probably, Quincy Enunwa still has to get his feet back underneath him after missing the year to the neck injury last year. But he's ready to go. I don't know that he's going to be the number 1 guy, but he'll certainly be a big contributor as the second or third guy with his yak dimension. But I'll go with Robbie Anderson. I think it's a big season for Robbie. He knows it, and he's shown that he can get downfield. And he and Darnold have had some connections in the preseason and the practices, and it's time to show that when the lights come on Monday night.
All right, I'm actually going to say that if all goes well health-wise with Pryor and Enunwa, I'm going to say by the end of the year they're going to be the top 2 guys. So I'm going to go with that. I think talent-wise they are, but we'll see whether or not it all fits in. And we don't know about Darnold, so Darnold's going to find his favorite guys, and we have no idea who that's going to end up being. All right, the offensive line. Let's see. Now, I know there's been a lot of criticism with what we've seen in the preseason, but as I said the other day with Jan, look, we haven't seen the starting five together. So I think that, yeah, you want to be critical of the backups. Heck, I'm critical of the backups. I don't think there's any question Jets need at least 2 or 3 more linemen on this team. And that does not even include what happens next year if a couple of the starters wind up being let go. And the Jets will have a lot of more new faces next year with the money they have and draft. So we know that. But this year, I actually think the starting five, if they stay healthy, will be fine. I don't think it's a great line, but I also don't think it's a terrible line. I think they've got potential, but they must stay healthy, Randy. If there's any injuries on this offensive line, I do think they're in trouble.
Yeah, that's a key point, Greg. And health has been a little hard to come by for Kelvin Beachum. He's been troubled by a foot issue for most of training camp. And Brian Winters has had a back issue, and he missed some time. Beachum did not start or did not play at all in the preseason, but they are back together. I just did a piece for NewYorkJets.com last night, kind of detailing the line coming together. I said they're whole and ready to roll. Let's hope that's the case. But yeah, Beachum, Carpenter, Long, Winters, Shell. That should be a good line. We'll see how good it can be. But they know that job one right now is to protect the new franchise, Sam Darnold, and make sure he can stay on his feet and get the experience he needs to move to the next level.
All right, let's turn our attention now to the defense. And you know what? I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about in the defensive line. I think besides Xavier Cooper, I was surprised they let him go. But besides that, the six, especially the top five, Williams, McClendon, Shepard, Pennell, and Anderson, they're going to play a lot, and they're going to be big factors up front. And I'm excited about it. It may not look like it on paper, Sheldon Richardson, Muhammad Wilkerson, but square peg, round hole. That's what it was before. I think they got guys that better fit the system now.
Yeah, they do, and we're going to see a lot of Nathan Shepard at one end. They call them all defensive linemen on the Jets, but I think he'll be at the 5 technique. Leonard Williams will be probably the 3, McClendon the 1.
Okay.
Then we have Foley Fatukasi, who was the 6th-round pick, rookie, and he obviously earned his keep, and he's on the roster, and he will contribute too. Mike Pennell might have forced out Xavier Cooper just because they kind of had the same roles last year.
Okay.
Did make contributions, but Pennell's a big guy and has some interesting, background, and he should also be a part of the rotation. And Henry Anderson, they like a lot.
Yeah, sure.
As a versatile contributor who they brought in on draft day in a trade with the Colts. So, I think that front six, if Leonard Williams can have the kind of pass rush season that he had 2 years ago, which he didn't have last year, stay healthy, as you say, for the offensive line, applies to the defense as well.
Sure.
That would certainly help a lot because the Jets otherwise are going to be manufacturing as much of a pass rush as they can because they don't have that one rusher at the moment who looks like he's going to come off the edge and get to the quarterback on a consistent basis.
A couple of things. First, Henry Anderson, I'm a fan. Watched him in college. The only issue with him is staying healthy. He's had health issues. If he stays healthy, he is going to be a big part of this defensive line. So just keep let Jet fans know that he's the real deal, but he's got to stay healthy. As far as Leonard Williams, a lot of articles over the last few weeks with roster cutdowns and some of the beat writers talking about Mike Maccagna's draft record. And, okay, through that, now let's get on. The cuts are made. You can criticize all you want about who's here, who's not. Everybody has their own way of critiquing. But somebody wrote an article recently, you might have saw it, about whether or not Leonard Williams was a good draft pick. And whether or not and whether or not Vic Beasley should have been the choice. Right. I mean, come on. Do we really have to go there when Leonard Williams is a superstar talent? And if and he just needs time to play, and we have to compare guys in different systems with different organizations, and it's just silly. It's such Monday morning quarterbacking to an extreme, especially with a talent like Leonard Williams. That's ridiculous.
Well, yeah, I thought that it was. I think Brian Costello is a good beat writer. I know him well, and. He's also been doing some thought-provoking kinds of pieces lately. I don't know if he's trying to toughen up the Jet fans for what may be ahead for them. He did throw that out there. I thought it was probably a stretch, only because Leonard Williams has shown that when he's healthy, which he wasn't completely last year at the start, that he's the real deal. He was a Pro Bowler, I think, 2 years ago, had 8 sacks. And so if he can reproduce that kind of performance, that will be a key to this defensive line going forward. And he's becoming more of a leader too. He's kind of a laid-back Southern Cal guy, but I think he's taking it on himself to step up in that regard, similar to other players in the next level, like a Darren Lee. But we can get there in a few seconds. But that's Mike Maccagnan's draft record has gone under the microscope especially this past week or two because of the cuts. But I think it just, to be fair, there are other people out there, fans and writers, who will be critical of the Jets because they tend to play their draft picks ahead of other free agents, either rookies or veterans. And, you can't have it both ways.
Good point. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, I think it's a good sign that Mike and Todd Bowles and the Jets say, all right, here's a few guys.
That's right.
We've looked at them. We've stayed with them for a few years. It's time to move on.
That's right.
And also Mike has done a very good job with veteran free agency, picking up either players off the street or in unrestricted free agency. And so, it's one of those, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But so far, I think the foundation is there to improve on what they've had the last 2 years, which is a pair of 5-11 seasons.
Yeah, and all you got to do is take a look at the Jets' top 2 receivers right now, Anderson and Kearse. They get Anderson after the draft, and they get Kearse in a trade that worked out for the Jets. So look, every GM is going to have misses. Bill Belichick went through 2 or 3 years when they had nothing. But you hit it on the head. First, like 1 week, it's, he's keeping all his draft picks. He's only keeping them because he wants to look good. And then the next week when he gets rid of them, he gets rid of all his draft picks. They're not any good. I mean, what does he do? So come on. I mean, like you said, what are you going to do? It's the way they're going to the way they're going to be, and it's not going to change until the Jets start winning some football games.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go to the linebacker spot. And look, we know just based on experience that Williamson and Jenkins are a solid combination. Really like what I've seen out of Williams so far in the preseason. That's very encouraging. Jenkins also, really like what I've seen from him. Look, he is not going to be the 10-8 sack guy a year, but he does look like he's going to do a variety of things for the Jets defense, and he's a mainstay. I think he should be here for a long time. I've already questioned Darren Lee enough over the past year, and you know what? Regular season, we're going to clean the slate, and we're going to start new and just make plays. And then as far as that spot is basically the wide open spot on the Jets defense that is just waiting for the Jets at some point in the next year or two to get their edge rusher. And until then, they got to fill it in with guys right now, whether it's Josh Martin or Ada Ochu or Copeland, and that's just the way that it is at this point. And there's nothing they could do about it except make sure, as a defensive coordinator, that Todd Bowles figures other ways out to get to the quarterback. And because he's got the best secondary that he's had in a long time, I believe that he's going to figure it out.
Yeah, and that's a key part to, I think, the Jets' strategy this year. It wasn't necessarily to ignore a pass rusher, but they still are searching for that key guy. But they have built up the back four to help the front seven. And in theory, you got Trumaine Johnson, Morris Claiborne, Jamal Adams, Marcus May when he's healthy. That's a really good secondary that should buy that extra second for the pass rushers to do what they need to do. But it's still going to be a work in progress. And as you say, the Jets may have to wait, a little while longer for that big, force off the edge. They're going to have to try to fashion something with Josh Martin as probably the starter. Josh, we talked earlier, was sidelined for the first practice of the week with the concussion, but I think he could be back. He was the starter for a good part of last year, and then they picked up Jerry Atochu, who did have the one very good sack season for the Chargers 2 years ago. And they had Brandon Copeland, who they liked, and they did feature a few times in the preseason as an edge rusher, and he did show some burst. And it'll be interesting to see if he can provide that in the regular season.
Well, no matter what, though, these guys, especially the new guys, they're going to have to perform. And if they don't perform, those are other guys that are going to find themselves on the street. And the Jets are just going to keep bringing in more guys if they have to figure out who's going to get the job done, whether it's pass rushing or special teams. So that's a good thing that these guys must perform because there's nothing locked up, no guarantees or anything like that. And we'll see how it all works out in the long run. But for the short run, it is what it is, and that's why it's important that guys like Lee, Williamson, and Jenkins really play well at their spots. Let's go to the secondary, and the Jets have the best. We've been excited about this secondary for a while now, and as far as the offseason, and now we're going to get the test on Monday night with Claiborne, Adams, and Johnson. It doesn't look like Marcus May play, though, so that is a little disappointing, but still, Claiborne, Adams, and Johnson, those are the top three of the group. And then we got some new faces and other guys that just have to step up, whether it's Justin Burris, Derek Jones making the team, and a couple of new guys, too, like, of course, Nickerson is a big draft pick. Wilcox and Middleton, they're getting some playing time. So this is probably where Todd Bowles is going to have to engineer some pressure and see if some of these guys can help along the lines. And even at Buster Screen, they usually does a pretty good job of rushing the passer when they need it.
That's true. They have sent Buster in the past, and I think Jamal Adams has done a little bit of some rushing from let's say when he moves up and cheats up there into the box, and all of a sudden you got 33 in the backfield. So that might be interesting to see. But yeah, all of that is correct. It'll be interesting to find out how they use their corners that they did keep on the roster. Obviously, Buster Screen back for his fourth Jets season. He's a solid player. He has committed penalties, no question. In the past, he did have one or two bad games last year, but I think he was fighting through injuries in those games, and he did also have some very good games. And he's now kind of the looks like the nickel guy, the jack of all trades back there. He's shown that he can make some plays. If he's got the surrounding cast, he's got a surrounding cast this year. And let's see Parry Nickerson, the rookie, and Derek Jones, who showed quite well in the preseason. The late round pick last year, who is now back, and Justin Burris is the third backup behind. Well, actually, the fifth backup with Darryl Roberts also in the mix at corner. So it'll be interesting to see if those young guys can have some spot roles, and maybe they can find themselves on the backfield, if not covering wide receivers down the field.
And Jets also have a very good defensive back coach, so that is going to help. And I expect that's going to be that part of the defense that, again, even without that edge rusher on the team, I think it's going to help the defense overall. So
yeah. Denard Wilson came up with that the nickname New Jack City for the starting secondary. And,
okay.
As Mo Claiborne said, we've been pounding away at that ever since. This is the year to establish New Jack City back there.
All right.
And they're going to do it against one of the more difficult passing teams that they're going to face this year.
Yep.
With Matt Stafford throwing to Golden Tate and to Marvin Jones, who burned the Jets for 4 touchdowns when he was a Bengal in 2013.
All right. More on the Lions in just a bit. Let's go to special teams. And as we mentioned, Roberts will be the primary kick return guy. Cannon, it'll be interesting to see exactly how he fits in. But there is hope that the more reps he gets, especially in practice, and the more confidence he gets, he'll get his chance again. And when he does, that would be a player that the Jets would love in that role for years to come. and split him up, of course, as a running back / kick returner. That's something that they really need, and that would be somebody with his speed that would be very valuable for the team. And as far as we know, of course, Edwards is back, and carousel of kickers coming into camp this week. But Jason Myers holds on to the job. And you know what? When I was hearing about all these kickers coming in, including Bailey, who's with the Cowboys and had a successful career with the Cowboys, I was like, you know what? I want to see Myers make this team. I think he deserves it. He hit the 58-yarder. He's hit. I think he's hit everything in preseason. He hasn't hit a lot, but he's been successful. He's got a booming kickoff leg, and as I said with Jan the other day, kickers in the NFL are like goaltenders in hockey and relief pitchers in baseball. You never know from year to year which guys are going to step up and have career seasons. And why not Jason Myers?
That's all very good observations by you, and I agree that Jason Myers came in and did a heck of a job in a short span of time, 2 weeks basically, a 2-week tryout, and he showed that he could be the guy. And even though they brought in Bailey and a few others they looked at, Todd Bowles said just yesterday that was really just due diligence to see who's out there. And, to kind of have a short list ready to go if they do need to move on. Mm-hmm. But Jason Myers, as we've said, is the best touchback man in the NFL the last 3 years as far as percentage of touchbacks. And he's going into a Ford Field again, at least for this week. He's the Jets kicker, and he's going into Ford Field where he had 2 field goals and 5 for 5 on touchbacks 2 years ago with the Jaguars. So, again, another guy who seems to like Ford Field and the friendly confines, and at least let's see how he handles the opener on the road, and he probably will be back when the Jets open at home against the Dolphins the week after.
All right, now let's talk about the latest injuries and suspensions. First of all, let's talk about players that are there's just 2 players right now that are expected to come back within the next couple of weeks. Is that correct? Is that Pierre Lewis and also Darius Stewart? Those guys coming back 1 and 2 weeks respectively?
Correct. And the third suspension was Rashard Robinson, who is the cornerback who will sit out 4 weeks.
Okay.
But Todd Bowles was very complimentary towards Rashard kind of getting things together in the off season and heading into this season. So, we'll see how that works out. But the one thing that Todd did say, which is an interesting take on it, but I think the take you have to have, he said it's not good that you have 3 guys who've been suspended, but it gives you a chance to look at some other people on the roster.
Sure.
And so, as you mentioned, tight end, we'll see if they all stick. Maybe a cornerback might shake loose, maybe a wide receiver. But if they want to keep their jobs, then just play your butts off.
That's right.
And when these guys come back, they'll make it even tougher on Bowles and the Jet staff to decide who to keep and who to activate.
All right. And Miles, when are the earliest we can see Miles?
Ron Tez is a PUP, physically unable to perform. He was active pup in the preseason and now is on the reserve pup, which means at least 6 weeks out.
Okay.
And then they have I think it's a 3-week window to look at him and decide what they want to do. So he will be sidelined for a bit longer.
All right. And, of course, the biggest thing for Miles is his play on special teams.
Absolutely. Right.
But this is going to give guys like Brooks and Middleton and Wilcox, especially.
Neville Hewitt.
Yeah, these guys are going to play hard and know that at any moment in the next 6 weeks, there's a guy that might be coming in on special teams that will potentially be taking another roster spot. So that is just another valuable guy, though, for special teams, and I'm sure Brant Boyer will welcome him back when he does come back. And by the way, there's a lot of talk about Brant Boyer, and I don't know if any of this stuff is more than just, again, let's just throw this out there and see what sticks. I don't know if the Jets special teams, because they gave up a touchdown to the Giants, is any major concern. It's the preseason. Have you heard anything, or do the Jets seem to feel just comfortable with Boyer, and there's really nothing for us to believe that he's on some sort of short leash?
I haven't heard anything to that regard within the team, and yet, you do have to say the punt return by the Giants was a little troubling. It was very early in the game. I think that was a combination of Lachlan Edwards having his worst punt of the game. It was an under 4.0 second hang time down the middle, and then the coverage was not there, and all of a sudden you've got a guy splitting the charge and going down the right sideline untouched. So that's happened a few times in the last couple of years, but a lot of that is a function of who they're putting on the field. So it's up to Brant Boyer to get those guys all coordinated. He is the special teams coordinator, and I think they've got good players.
I agree
to go down and run under kicks.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned when you were talking, Neville Hewitt, we didn't really talk much about.
Yeah.
He showed up as a very good contributor in an inside linebacker rotation, or if he has to play. But he also contributed on special teams,
right.
and he's another guy with Josh Martin and with some of the cornerbacks that we mentioned, the backup guys. I think we'll see Nickerson and Jones and guys like that, maybe Wilcox. They're all going to contribute because they're not going to be starting, but it's a good group, an experienced group, and they need that to come to the fore for Brant Boyer and for the special teams.
Yeah, I think that the Jets have more talent now on special teams than they've had in about 3 or 4 years. So as far as I can see, I don't think there's any talent excuses now. So we'll see, though. That's preseason. Now we're getting the regular season. If it happens in the regular season, then there's an issue. But we're not going to get into that too much. And by the way, I also want everybody to know, whenever I ask Randy about stuff going on with the Jets, I'm asking him basically what he's heard that's been talked about publicly. I'm not asking Randy to divulge any sort of inside information from whispers in the building because I wouldn't even expect him to tell me anything. So just to let everybody know. All right, because Randy's in New York and he works for the Jets, and I'm out here in Western North Carolina. Let's talk about the by the way, the long-term injuries. Ijalana and McGuire. Now, McGuire, we know he's coming back soon. Or at least we're hoping. How soon can he come back, and what is the status with Ijalana? Is he out for the year?
Well, I believe Ijalana will miss the season.
Okay.
He was put on IR before the final cuts. Elijah McGuire, that was unfortunate that he got hurt. I think it was the first day of training camp, broke his foot, and he was placed on the short-term IR. So he is a recallable player. I believe that's an 8-week window as opposed to 6 on the pup.
So it's any time in 8 weeks.
I think.
Or does he have to be? He has to be on it for 8 weeks.
I think he's got to be on it for
Got
8
it.
weeks, and then at any time after that, he can be recalled.
Okay, got it.
That's what, especially if, the running backs right now, we mentioned Isaiah Crowell and Bilal Powell and Trent Cannon. That's their running back depth chart right now.
Yeah.
All the others
Not a
that
lot.
they had in camp are gone.
Yeah,
so,
for now.
Right, for now. And there may be a very big need for Elijah McGuire, who was coming into his own as a rookie and showed some promise, and it would be great to see him return in the second half of the season.
All right, let's go over the practice squad, and first let's talk about guys who just barely missed making the team that are on the practice squad. You got Brandon Bryant, you got Jeremy Clark, you got Frankie Louvu, Anthony Wint. Those are the guys, I believe. I think that's it. But I think the most interesting name would be Louvu. Because Louvu actually looked pretty good in pressuring the quarterback and looked like a missile out there at times, but almost like too much of an uncontrolled missile and too many penalties. It's a perfect spot for him as the practice squad because he needs to temper things down and try to be more controlled while also harnessing the ability of going after the quarterback and being as relentless as he can. So maybe the Jets have something here with a little bit of practice time.
Yeah, that's a very good point because Louvu did show all the things you said. He was like an unguided missile sometimes. He did make some plays. He did get hit with some penalties, and so it was kind of a give and a take with him, but it's good to see him back. I thought it was interesting because we've got a number of guys here on the practice squad. I think it's like 4 of them or maybe 5 that we did not see on the Jets this preseason. Usually you get a nice, healthy 8, 9, 10 guys that were cut and you bring them back. And the Jets have gone out and got guys like Nico Fala, the center from Southern Cal, and Deontay Burnett, wide receiver, Southern Cal. I'm pretty sure that Sam Darnold put in the good word for those guys.
You think?
Both
you think?
Yeah, exactly. And then Bronson Kafusi and Diojo Joseph as a tackle. But the interesting pickup after the initial round of signings for the practice squad was Davis Webb.
Sure.
The quarterback, Giants let him go. The Jets had gone with John Wolford, who they brought in the last week of the preseason, and then put him on the practice squad. But that was a quick stay. Davis Webb, 6'5", 225. He's got the size. He was, I think, a second-round pick for the Giants. Was it that high? He definitely has the pedigree to be somebody that you might be looking at to groom down the road for a spot on the depth chart in the regular season.
Well, I think what it probably also what really would make more sense in the long run. Look, Josh McCown may not be back next year. It's very possible, and if that happens, there's a backup spot that you'd love to fill with a young, talented player, and that would be a perfect spot for Davis Webb. So whether or not he can hang around long enough and nobody picks him up, that kind of thing, there's still a long way to go there. And maybe if the Jets like what they see in a couple of weeks, and some of these spots open up, and they decide we don't want to lose him. Let's move him into the 53-man roster. So that's possible too. Kafusi, I'm very interested in because the Ravens are very deep this year up front. And they're going to have a very good defense. They've spent a lot of draft picks over the last several years on their front seven, and so I'm very intrigued to see if Kafusi could cut it here. And then I'm, by the way, a big fan of D'Angelo Henderson. I think D'Angelo Henderson could definitely make his way to the Jets' top spot and be maybe even their third or fourth running back before too long.
Yeah, that's possible. He's kind of a dark horse here because we didn't know much about him. He didn't play with the Jets, obviously, in the preseason. But he's got a year of experience under his belt, and he's a small guy, 5'7", but he packs it in a 208-pound frame. And you're right. I mean, the Jets looked at a number of guys behind the starters this preseason, didn't keep anyone except Cannon. And there's certainly a possibility. Of course, McGuire still is on the roster on IR, but Henderson could play a factor down the road. Definitely is a possibility.
All right. And by the way, we mentioned a few of the injuries. Kearse again he did not practice, so chances are he may not play. Why rush it anyway? The Jets again have three other quality receivers at this point, and there's nothing wrong with having Peak as your number 4 receiver on Monday night. Mentioned him, may or may not play, and also Josh Martin dealing with a concussion. So what do you think? You think these three guys end up missing Monday night?
Well, I don't know that. Certainly Todd hasn't declared anybody out yet. I think Kearse might be touch and go, and May has not practiced for a week or two with not a re-aggravation of his foot injury, but a new foot situation. So it will depend upon whether he practices today and Saturday, I think, to see whether he's going to be available. So, you've got to say, well, maybe he might not make it. Now, Josh Martin, supposedly the concussion was against the Giants, so he might be ready to make a return. But we'll see again in practice today and Saturday heading into the game on Monday night.
All right, and let's close it out with your predictions. Jan thought that the Jets would win somewhere around 6 or 7 games. I upped it to about 7 or 8 games. I think the Jets are going to be in contention till the playoffs, till December, and I think it's going to be a fun year. It all does depend, though, on Sam Darnold's development, but I'm very excited about that. I think Jet fans should be very excited about that without getting too crazy. And anybody that's talking about anything, just he's going to be a Hall of Famer or something like that, then that's just going, just temper that. But overall, there's no reason Jet fans should not be excited about Sam Darnold. And we've seen rookie quarterbacks have successful rookie seasons before. We've seen them start all season and enter the playoffs. So it is possible, and I think that the Jets are going to have a legitimate chance. As again, we'll always say it, especially on this team, because they are not yet where other perennial playoff teams are. They must stay healthy and keep a majority of their top guys healthy for them to be in contention in December. So what about you?
Yeah, I've seen some stories about 21-year-old quarterbacks, too, which is not so favorable to those guys who come out so young. Darnold is, as we said, the youngest starting quarterback on opening day in the NFL since the start of the Super Bowl era in the mid-'60s. Now, does that mean that he's destined for a 4-12 campaign or something along those lines? Of course not. He could do well, but I think the health is key. The health on the line, the health in the skill positions to help him along. But I think with the competition the Jets had at all positions, really all positions this preseason, I think has helped them. They still are, a year or two away, but I would like to see them get to 8-8. I would like to see them challenge for a playoff berth, even if they don't make it.
Sure.
They need to step up from 5-11. Last year's 5-11 qualitatively was better than the previous year's 5-11.
Mm-hmm.
But it's time now to show that quantitatively, which is to get up. And there's no reason that the Jets can't challenge. Other teams have made those moves in the past, have improved by 4, 6, 8 games. That's a lot to ask, but with good health, the players on this team, and if Darnold has the kind of year that everybody's hoping, I think 8-8 is certainly possible, and let's keep our fingers crossed that they can challenge for that elusive playoff berth.
All right, Randy, appreciate it. The preseason is done, thank goodness. So we'll get it all started on next week when we wrap up the Detroit game. And then the home opener with the rival Miami Dolphins. We'll be previewing that and all the other news and transactions during the week. And it'll be every Friday at 11 o'clock here. And once again, good luck on Saturday, of course. Yeah, that's when your routine begins with the 7 Points game preview, correct?
Correct. 7 Points, our popular game preview section, and 7 points of interest for each game. It's going to go Saturday this week, and then every Friday thereafter.
Excellent. Randy, thanks a lot. Enjoy the game. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, Greg.
All right, you got it. That's Randy Lang, and that's going to wrap it up here for Jets FM on the OFN. Jan is not going to join me for the postgame show on Monday night or on Thursday, September 20th, but I will be doing it by myself. So there's that. Anyway, so tune in to our first post-game show. And we've done this before, but it's been a few years. But Jan will join me for the Miami game, I believe, and then starting September 30th and then the rest of the season. But I'll be on Monday night following the Detroit Lions-Jets game, give you early impressions of what I think. And it'll probably be pretty close after the game, especially since it's nighttime. Not going to wait around too long. So probably within 5 minutes, I would say, of the Jets game, we'll do it. And then we'll make it available, because I know there's a lot of people. It'll be late at night. You don't want to hear these things usually. Usually, you don't want to hear these things. Oh, and just so you know, of course, if you're going to listen live, you have to go over to the Prime Sports Network to listen live. But we'll make it available on demand right away. If it's not made available right away on Monday night, you'll wake up on Tuesday morning and it'll be there. So we'll talk to you for the post-game show. We'll talk to you again next week with Randy and all season long. Thanks for tuning in to Jets FM on the OFN. For Randy Lang, I'm Greg DePalma. You know the drill. Alpha Mike Foxtrot.